If you have said to yourself, I should write that, or if someone has said to you, you should write that, then I'm talking to you because you need to write. And that's why you're tuned in to yWrite. Hi, welcome to yWrite. I'm your host, Angela Grout, and thank you so much for tuning into this episode of yWrite, because we all have to write, and there's a why behind why we write. And today I have a very special guest who has a huge why behind why she writes. And this is a why we all should not only write, but we should read. And we need to be educated and informed, which is why books and stories are so important. And there's one inside of you. So when you find out what you need to share, you're going to do exactly what my guest today, Dr. Kenna Stephenson, has done. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about Dr. Kenna. I can call you Dr. Kenna?
Yes, please.
Dr. Kenna, she is a family physician whose holistic care is data and scientifically anchored with evidence. She treats patients, not their ailments and not just their conditions. She treats the patient. Don't we all want someone who's going to do that for us? Because we're all patients. She has prescriptions that she gives that helps with faith and intuition, and obviously, giving us what we really need with medicine. And that's not just the prescriptions and the food and diet changes, but it also incorporates things like I'm going to read you this one quote that she has because I love it, because this is what they've said about her, that she empowers women. And she is a family practitioner, but she empowers women especially to reclaim what is rightfully theirs, to trust their intuition, living fully and confidently. And in order for us to trust our intuition, we need to know that we have to be treated body, mind, and spirit. Our body has ailments for many reasons, and a lot of times they can get treated in other ways. So, I have guests on my show that have written, that they're writers. And obviously, as a doctor, she's written a lot. But she has written The Gospel of Women's Health. Right here. See this? This is the gospel, everybody. You're going to all be running to where it's for sale on Amazon when this is done. And she's going to tell us more about that. She's a teacher. Dr. Kenna, you teach at the University of Arizona?
Yes, I teach at the College of Medicine at Phoenix for the University of Arizona.
And you have taught not just at college, but you've taught all around the world and in many countries and many states across America. You've been to Guam and Belize, and you practice medicine, there, Guatemala. I mean, you're very well known, not only with where you've gone and touched lives and practiced one-on-one, but you have your own podcast called Dr. Kenna.
Yes, it's on YouTube.
Yeah. So, we're going to post that link below too, so people can get more information. But I, really want to warmly welcome you for coming on the show, to talk about not just the writing process, but the why behind you writing it, and to give some valuable information to, my guests, my audience. So thank you so much for being on this Zoom today.
My pleasure, Angela. And I just want to thank you for yWrite. It has become my muse. So when I get home and I'm fixing dinner, I listen to it, do the dishes, I wrap it up, and then I'm ready to write. I'm feeling so inspired.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so glad. I do always end the show with a little prompt to get people writing. So today will be no different, but we'll see what the prompt will be. So this book, the Gospel of Women's Health, and your subtitle is about awakening Athena again. I think it's so beautifully described, but why write this book? What motivated you to say, we're going to awaken Athena in everyone?
Angela, my biggest motivation is helping women around the world, helping them realize that they themselves have the greatest power as it relates to getting into a better level of health, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. And I simply want to illuminate for them the roadmap to getting there. Gospel means good news. And so this is the good news about women's health. You don't have to accept your current state of health. You have the power to transform.
And I'm going to just dive right in, because of course I've read the book. I'm reading it like gospel, where I'm just sometimes opening certain pages. The way it's written from a writer's point of view, I mean, it is, the technical writing of medical things is not my forte. I'm not going to write about, the deep words that the doctors use, but you've written it in such a simple way for women to understand. And the way I love it the most is because you give examples, like you're showing examples of like patient RR, not using their names, but, saying, okay, patient RR, this is this, a young girl who, is definitely having troubles in her life and having all these period pains. And then you uncover that not just is it related to that, but it's related to something socially going on with her. And, a lot of doctors want to treat the symptoms, but they don't want to get to behind the symptom. And what and when did you discover that, listening is the most important tool a doctor has besides testing?
Well, absolutely. I'm glad that you're enjoying the case studies. And I wrote the book so that a woman may just pick it up and start reading in any chapter. I think each chapter stands alone, as well as the appendices, A, B, C, and D. And so for some women, they like to start there with those case studies, which are classified by age. I think that I've always seen patients in a holistic way. I cannot think of a time in my life that I didn't. And I think that all three are equally important: the biological, the emotional, and the spiritual. And that modern medicine, or what we might want to call the medical industrial complex, which encompasses medical education, the pharmaceutical industry, the insurance industry, they are overly focused on the medical. And this is why the state of health in the United States, despite how much money is poured into it, we continue to decline as compared to the rest of the world as it relates to the well-being of people living here. And so I think I've always seen patients this way. I was certainly guided by my teachers in reading the literature, all kinds of literature that reinforce this view of the patient.
Yeah, I mean, we as women, sorry everyone, I'm speaking on all of our behalves. We do go to the doctor with our physical ailments, whether weight gain, things like that. Like, okay, help us to figure out how to lose weight, and obviously things like that can be changed with diet. But you've done some really great, research and like kind of cutting edge stuff where you're testing saliva, you're running these tests to see what the hormone levels are, but then listening and saying, you know what, this is where you are in your life, and if you make these certain dietary changes or maybe increase certain B12 vitamins or whatever the case may be for the individual person, like, and you do that because I see it in the case studies that you show, like you're showing, okay, woman comes in, presents this way. I mean, it's very, technically written that it's like, okay, this is how they present, but then in the layman's terms of, what this means and the questions you asked and what you discovered in the conversation and how and why you decided to do certain testings. And then one of my favorite parts is obviously, you want your doctor to write you the script if you need the script, but the script isn't always over the counter at CVS. The script is in the form sometimes of, you call it handiwork, working with your hands, and you give prescriptions on books to read and movies to watch, things to do, start a knitting club, go walking. And these are all really like so informative. When and how did you discover that that was an important tool for a doctor to hand over to the patient?
Yes, thank you for sharing that. I think it's important not to just assess what the patient is eating and what they're drinking, but what they're feeling and what they're thinking, because the mind is so powerful as it relates to our state of health. And food and mood is so intertwined. So just limiting the counseling to talking about calories and portion sizes, I think, is very short-sighted, because What do I want? I want to help that patient get to a better feeling place. I want to help her achieve her healthcare goals. I want to see her transform using her power. So it's not about seeing me every 2 to 3 months and a few dietary tips, but it's about her and the daily work every single day. And so I think that there are many motivating tools, and each woman has her own unique bio, psycho, social, spiritual signature. And by learning a little bit more about what she's feeling, about what she's thinking, about what motivates her, I can tap into that with these very unique prescriptions for cinema therapy, for handwork, and
Biotherapy.
yes, and now I'm prescribing apps because this is a way that she can check in on a daily basis. And then when she comes to return appointment, she can show me her app, and I can look at these day-to-day changes and day-to-day decisions, and they all add up.
Yeah.
So sometimes a film, I'm sure that you've had the experience where you see a movie and you just can't shake it. You just can't get it out of your mind. There's certain phrases, there's certain scenes that just stick with you. Sometimes you don't even know why. Other times it's slowly revealed over time. And sometimes you can go right back to the touch point and you say, oh yeah, this resonates with me because of that experience that I had. And clearly I need to write about it. I need to get it out there. I need to process it.
Well,
So,
and I know that 100%, not just from watching movies, but whether, you're watching movies, reading a newspaper, reading a book. And for me, even like dreams, like I'll have a dream and it will really stay with me. And, when it stays with me long enough, or for me, when I wake up in the middle of the night and I can't go back to sleep because I'm thinking about it, I do take pen to paper because it's a way to kind of get it out of me so that I can rest and know that it's something that came to me, and it may be a message to me or something I can learn from. But at the same time, now that it's out, and because I like being, I like writing, I can share that with other people, because that is for me, I think a very important thing when people say, oh, no one wants to hear my story. Someone wants to hear your story. There is, because we all can learn from each other. And proof is this book. I mean, the Gospel of Women's Health, when you're sharing, I mean, I'm going to say 60 different women's stories. I don't know how many were in there, but I mean, you're going to find at least one or two or many that resonates with you. I mean, I'm 53 years old. So of course I'm looking at the 53-year-old woman and they're going, oh, I have some similarities to that. Or I can relate back to that 14-year-old, and it's like, yeah, you learn from those experiences and you can help and guide someone to get through them because of what you've done. So there's so many quotes in this book that really why writers listening, let me tell you, there are so many little nuggets in here that I want to share that you're going to just really want to read. But one of the things that I really loved is that, you do this thing called test and treat. And then when you're giving these prescriptions of hand therapy and bio touch, I mean, I think I want to explain to the audience a little bit about what those things are, like what test and treat is and what biotherapy is and why it's important. And same with, doing hand therapy.
oh, wow, that's a lot of ground to cover. I'll see if I can give some quick answers. So I think that, again, our testing, oftentimes the focus is in the wrong place and it's very limited. And many patients come to me and they say, oh, all my tests are normal, but I feel lousy. I'm on more prescribed drugs than I've ever taken in my life, and I weigh more now than I weighed when I was pregnant with my last child. And so the test and treat, it's very targeted testing, very individualized testing, which is more time intensive for the physician, but also very worthwhile and very satisfying as a woman sees a visible picture of her stress hormones, of her sex hormones, of immune factors, and the ratios and the balances between those that all are impacting her current state of health. And so I seek to quantify what we can quantify, and then look within the context of her current experience to get some guidance on changes that she may make. As far as the handwork, I love William Blake. I read Blake a lot. And one of my favorite quotes, which I share with my patients at least once a week, is art is life, science is death.
Mm.
And so I want my patients creating. I want them to find life. And tapping into the creative neural networks in the brain affects us at the cellular level. It can be something very simple, such as diamond art. It can be knitting. It can be cross-stitching. It can be sewing. Yes, it can be cooking. But creating something of beauty, using fine motor skills, sequencing, counting, interacting with color, interacting with patterns, interacting with designs. It can be chalk drawing, but I want them doing that at least 20 minutes a day. And many people feel intimidated by the artistic experience because maybe, they were told in grade school by the teacher that the drawing wasn't good, or that the writing wasn't as it should be. But yet I think everyone has the power and potential to create. And so I strongly encourage that. And I've done it myself my whole life. And I think that it is a very anchoring and centering activity. I remember during Hurricane Katrina seeing a photograph on the front page of a paper, and it was a woman sitting out on her back porch with flood waters all around, and she's knitting an afghan. That was her centering point. It's a very meditative activity, and the research supports that. And I go into all the research in my book. So yes, I also have a video on YouTube that is a showcase for many of my patients and the art that they have created, both men and women.
Well, and I'm going to just quick, because at the end of each little chapter and segment, you give a nugget where people can take their phone, and you have a QR code, and boom, it takes you right to those videos. So like, it's so simple to read, and then it gives you, more later. And I just think that's brilliant that you did that.
Yeah, so there's so many layers to the book, The Gospel of Women's Health. So you can get the print version that's like this. It's also available digitally. It's also available as an audio book. And so you can hear this and experience it in many different ways. But also, every chapter is referenced. Every chapter goes back to peer-reviewed scientific literature. Here's a chapter that's got over 90 scientific references. So this is part of the empowering of women to know that there is a scientific basis, even though maybe they haven't heard about it, because the medical industrial complex doesn't talk about these models of care. But they can take this to their physician, to their nurse practitioner, to their naturopath, to the pharmacist, say, hey, I want to try some botanical agents. I want to try plants, not synthetic drugs. And here's some evidence. Do you think I'm a candidate for this? I want women highlighting this, where they see themselves, their daughters, their mothers, their sisters-in-law, their coworkers, and say, there's help, there's hope, there's good news.
And there is help. And, so I'll share, like, when I started to read your book, I was listening to you talking, you do the audiobook, and, it's so encouraging. And you do have that like friend in your ear who's sharing stories of other people saying, let me tell you about this lady, maybe this will help you out. And, then getting the actual book in hand and like seeing those QR codes and seeing the research behind it. So it's like, wow, like you said, 30, 60, 90 different references in the back of each little thing of like, okay, you want proof that this, works? Here's the proof if you want the physical proof. But the real proof is what works for you, So even though there can be all these medical jargon out there about how this works, every person is individual. And like you said, trying to get what works for you and treating that patient And what we are, what we put into our bodies, whether it's food or what we read or what we watch, all of those things are who we become. And it's like if you're sad and down and you've been watching all these, I don't know, terrible, I don't want to say murder mystery movies because I did write a murder mystery, but it's like you're watching these depressing things or you're Googling all of your depressing ailments, then yeah, you're depressed, and you're
Absolutely.
in a dark state. You're not creating an avenue to enrich yourself. Whereas, maybe if you're Googling, like, how do I not feel so terrible or tired in the morning? Now you're starting to create a new path of how to move forward with it. And, my audience knows I just had this year 2 knee replacements. I mean, pretty major surgery.
Yeah.
And for me, during the recovery, color therapy really, coloring those adult coloring books, when I hate to use the word like kind of zoned out on medication, and icing your legs, I need to be a productive person. If I'm not doing something that's productive, I can get depressed. So, doing that really has helped, so you have to find and tap into what works for you. My mother can say 15,000 rosaries in a day. That's her center, and that's where she finds peace. Everybody has their own thing, because if we all did the same thing, what a kind of
variety is the spice of life.
Yes.
And that's why practicing medicine this way is so fulfilling, so satisfying, and really an endless adventure, because I'm a human artist and I love to illuminate, to imagine the potential, the promise, the possibility, see that patient in that light, and then watch her get there.
Yeah.
I think as to what you were talking about before, oftentimes with some of my Gen Zer and millennial patients, I will ask for permission to see their playlist on their phone. Because that does give me insight. And music, sound therapy is an incredible tool. Yes. And we know that each individual cell responds to resonance, to vibration, to patterns in unique ways. And Manfred Klein's, an Australian physician, did some incredible research in something called syntax. And I talk about it in one of the chapters in my book. And so helping them modify that playlist, or asking them, would they contemplate a new playlist before their next appointment, can bring some change. It's an easy, simple tool.
Yeah. If you're you walk around and you painted all your rooms and your ceiling black, maybe just a little change of color can help increase the mood, or, music changes. For me, of course, I'm hosting the show yWrite. So I'm trying to encourage people to write. And that is a form of, using your hands and focusing on one thing. And, even if it's writing your to-do list out for the day, it's a matter of getting it out and visually creating something. You're creating something visually that you can hold.
And it also, I think, for many of my patients, it creates such a sense of achievement as they can cross things off the list. And so sometimes it just depends on the patient. I will say, keep it really, really simple when they're just so in such a fog. And I call that fear, obligation, and guilt. And it's the opposite of where I want them in my triangle of the feminine life cycle, which is based on love, intuition, faith, and service. I think I have a little graphic of it right here.
Yeah. And you even said, like, using fear and obligation or guilt just like motivates negativity. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so to help them get out of that fog, sometimes it can be very, very simple steps. Yeah. Just day by day, almost minute by minute, hour by hour of them checking in with these 3 points.
Yes.
What is my motivation in this behavior? What is my motivation in this decision? And self-care is a big part of healthcare. And this is where the patient has the power.
Yeah. And we do in this Gospel of Women's Health. You've written it in a way to empower women. Hence awakening the Athena in us and saying we are goddess. We do have the ability to create, and we have the ability to create ourselves to be healthy. I mean, that's what the universe wants for us. They want us, God, whatever you want to call it. I mean, wants us to be healthy, wants us to be productive. We get, one experience in this human body. So, if you're going to get one car for the rest of your life, you're going to take very good care of it. You're going to make sure that you follow the manual, even though we don't really have a manual for human body, but you want to use this vessel in the way that's going to make the world a better place. And, for myself, I'll just share, I do some writing classes where, we kind of do these writing to heal programs. And with it, it came to me when I was writing my April Rain books. It was a murder mystery. And I'm Catholic. I would sit in a church and say, why am I writing this? Like, I don't want to write this, it's scary. And the inspiration of it, did come from a murder that I had witnessed. And of course, it was unsolved. So trying to get an answer to how this happened, here I'm trying. And when I was praying, like, why am I writing this? The answer I get, like, when there's no story, any story will do. And the example, because then it came to me in a dream and it stuck with me, was, if you walk into the parking lot and you have a brand new car, and someone has jammed a carriage into the side of that car, or the carriage is jammed in, you don't know who did it. Do you think the wind blew it, or do you think someone intentionally did it? Now, there's no cameras, there's no witnesses, you're never going to know the truth. So which story is going to make you feel better? Because we want to be able to feel better from any experience we've had in life. I mean, of course, we're going to say, okay, the wind blew it, it was an accident, people can argue, well, someone left the carriage and didn't put it away. I mean, could it have been preventable? Absolutely. Could heart disease be preventable? Absolutely, right? I mean,
well, I love that you were open to developing yourself as a writer in topics that were far beyond your comfort zone. That's what growth and transformation is all about.
Yeah. And
I think your story is very inspiring in your whole journey in writing that. And I think it's really a metaphor for what I want to see in my patients, what we want to see in everyone, and that is turning tragedy into triumph.
Yes.
Because sadly, I see many women that are stuck. They're stuck in the tragedy, and they can be stuck in this tragedy.
Yeah.
For decades.
Oh, yes.
And what does that generate? That generates feelings of bitterness, resentment, guilt, grief, self-doubt. And we know at a cellular level, all of those emotions translate into adverse changes. And so writing can definitely help transform a tragedy into a triumph. And I will tell you that some of the most inspiring, serene, calming, dignified women that I've ever known in my life suffered terrible tragedies, unspeakable tragedies. You may never hear their stories. I get to hear their stories. I am very privileged to hear many, many stories.
Yes, no, you definitely are privileged to hear them, because people do open up to their doctors, which is what we're supposed to do. And being able to provide someone with that safe space to express themselves, whether they just need to express themselves or they understand that their story can help others. It really is important, because like you said, people get stuck in a tragedy, like whether, they've had a miscarriage or they got diagnosed with cancer or, whatever it is, and they relive that moment over and over again. But to understand how it's gotten them to today sometimes can help them with that. And, your book is so important that, I wish I could be like Oprah show right now and say, you get a book and you get a book and you get a book.
Well, I think the price point makes it possible for all women to have this book.
Tell them, where can they go buy this book? And
that is my vision. I want to help and empower women coast to coast and around the world. And so you can go to my website, drkenna.com. That's spelled out DOCTORKENNA, drkenna.com. And there is a link tree on there to all the different choices with the book: Amazon, Spotify, Google Play, Nook, Audible. So whatever your forte, if you like the audio format, if you like the digital format, if you like the print format, you can go to drkenna.com, find the link tree, and satisfy
I'm going to put the links below. I say that, links below, so people can get that. And I thank you so much for coming on the show and talking about not only the wisdom and experience you have, but the why behind why you wrote this book. And we could have a whole nother segment about how long it took you to write it, because I'm sure it wasn't overnight. not with all the experience that you gathered. So Dr. Kenna, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Angela, and to your continued health and everyone's health out there. Keep writing.
Thank you. Yes. And, thank you, audience in Studio 954, for making this opportunity here for me so that I can have this show that I'm passionate about and share wonderful, talented artists like Dr. Kenna Stephenson with you. So now it's time for you to take out that inner artist and do some handiwork and take care of your inner goddess or God. Men and women, we all have this birthright that we're here to create. So today you're going to create something on a piece of paper. So this is the prompt. You're going to get out your pen, take out a paper. When the show ends, I want you to set your timer for, 5-10 minutes and start writing. And, there can be so many prompts that I can come up with today, because, you can do something as simple as literally write down what you need to accomplish for the rest of today. Whether it's as simple of, I have to make dinner, I need to finish the laundry, I need to tuck the kids into bed, prepare lunch for tomorrow. Do the checklist and go back and check with it. But you know what? For 10 minutes, why don't we just start writing about our health, how we're feeling today. Talk about not only your ailments, but talk about the good things you've done today. Did you hear a song on the radio that you remembered? Did you see the sunrise this morning? Is there something that resonated with you that you saw or experienced just today? And just start writing about all of that. All right. So thank you so much for tuning into yWrite. I will see you next time, and click the links below to get more information on Dr. Kenna Stephenson's book right here, The Gospel of Women's Health. Bye-bye.